Good morning, everyone. Chapter 44, The Patient Robot. After being trapped on Hilltop Farm for nearly a year, Roz was now free to run away anytime she liked. But without Bright Bill to guide her, she wouldn't make it far. So the robot patiently waited for spring to come and for her son to return so they could begin their long journey home together. Chapter 45, The Barn Conversations. As winter dragged on, Roz spent more of her time inside with the herd. There were long stretches of quiet. The cows chewed their hay. The robot tapped the farm computer. The wind gently rattled the windows. And then someone would start talking. Someone else would chime in, and the quiet at the barn would gradually be overtaken by conversations like these. "I am so bored," Tess was staring at the floor. "I can't wait until spring when I can wander through tall grass and feel warm sunlight on my back. I just hope I don't die of boredom first." Old Annabelle snorted. "You young cows are spoiled rotten," she said. "Your lives are so easy, and still you find things to complain about." Tess rolled her eyes. Yeah, we should be grateful for what we've got. You've told us before." "Well, you should be grateful for what you've got," said Annabelle. "I've lived on other farms, and trust me, you have nothing to complain about." Tess couldn't help being curious, and she said, "What were other farms like?" "Oh, I'd rather not discuss them," said Annabelle in a low voice. "You see, I witnessed some terrible things on those farms. It was a blessing when I was moved here, but I often think about the animals I left behind. I hope they're okay." The old cow sank into thought for a minute. "I know life isn't perfect," she said at last, "but we have so much to be grateful for. We have our lovely herd, and we have this beautiful barn, and we have Roz," added Tess. "And we have Roz." Annabelle turned and smiled at the robot in the corner. "Roz listens to us and treats us with love and kindness, and she makes our lives as comfortable as you possibly can. We certainly will miss her when she's gone." "Roz, why do humans need so much cow's milk?" said Lily as the other calves crowded around her. It was a question they'd all been wondering about. "Well, there are billions of humans in the world," explained Roz, "and many of them drink milk and combine it with different ingredients to make different foods." "What kind of foods?" said another calf. "Butter and cheese and yogurt are made with milk," said Roz. "Many desserts are also made with milk." "What's a dessert?" said someone else. "A dessert is a sweet food eaten at the end of a meal. Popular desserts include cake and custard and ice cream." The answer only raised more questions. What is cake? What is custard? What is ice cream? Roz tried her best to explain these foods to the calves, but it wasn't easy. After all, the robot couldn't even perform the simple act of eating. How could she possibly describe the flavors and sensations of tasting delicious desserts? Lily interrupted. "Just tell me this, Roz. When we're older, will our milk be used to make desserts?" "Yes," said the robot. The calves smiled. Then they trotted away, happy in the knowledge that someday they'd help to bring sweet and delicious things into the world. "It is almost spring," said Roz to the herd. "It is almost time for me to run away, back home to the wilderness. I am sorry that I must leave, but will all of you be cared for when I am gone? I promise." Cows began mooing from their stalls. "Don't worry about us, Roz. There's no need to apologize. We understand why you're running away." Lily poked her head through the railings of her stall and said, "I can never run away to the wilderness. I would be too frightened." "I'd love to roam through the wilderness," said Tess. "It sounds so exciting." "No wilderness for me, thank you very much," said Annabelle. "I just want a quiet, cozy life." "I have plenty to fear in the wilderness," said Roz. "However, I have more to fear here. I can never be my true self around humans, and so I must try to return to my home." "I only wish I could do it by myself," she went on, "but I need help. I could never escape from the farm without the children, and I could never find my way home without my son. I feel bad for asking so much of them." "Don't feel bad," said Lily. "Bright Bill and the children want to help you. They love you. We all do. The farm won't feel the same without you, Roz, but we know you're doing the right thing." The herd agreed with Lily, and throughout the barn, cows quietly nodded their heads. Chapter 46, The Spring. With each passing day, the sun climbed a little higher, and its rays grew a little warmer. The last patches of snow melted away, and color returned to the land. The pasture, the fields, the trees, they were all turning bright green, and the air slowly filled with the fresh smells of spring. Many of the cows had been steadily growing bigger, and now calving season had arrived. When the time was right, each cow went out to the pasture so her calf could be born in soft grass. The robot stood nearby, just in case anyone needed her help, but nobody ever did. Even the first-time mothers knew what to do instinctively, and soon newborn calves were frolicking around the farm. Spring was a happy, exciting time, and yet Roz was distracted. More and more she found herself looking to the skies, hoping to see Bright Bill and his flock. She knew that they were on their way. Chapter 47. The Dinner. Mr. Sharif hopped out of the truck with his arms full of shopping bags. He limped toward the farmhouse, dragging his leg in the usual way, and then he fell. Roz ran over and found the man sprawled on the driveway, groceries scattered around him. "Are you okay?" she said, pulling him to his feet. "I'm fine," he grumbled. Roz started picking up the groceries and said, "Let me help you inside." A minute later, the two of them were stepping into the house. Jackets and hats hung from pegs on the wall. Shoes were lined up beneath the bench. The man peeled off his boots and hollered, "Kids, it's time to cook dinner." Footsteps pounded down the ceiling, and the children came flying down the staircase with their dog. "Is Roz having dinner with us?" said Jaya. "Roz doesn't eat," said Jade. "I know that, but she can sit with us." "How about it, Roz?" said Mr. Sharif. "Care to join us for dinner?" The robot stared at the family. The family smiled at the robot. "What would you like me to do?" said Roz. In a very proper voice, Jed said, "I would greatly enjoy the pleasure of your company for dinner." In a very improper voice, Jaya said, "I order you to stay for dinner." The children didn't wait for a response. They snatched the groceries from Roz and scampered off. Oscar ran after them, barking, "Is that food? Smells like food. I want food." The wooden floor creaked as Roz followed Mr. Sharif through the living room. A comfy chair and a sofa faced a darkened electronic screen. Above the fireplace hung a painting of a familiar old barn. Doorways led to other rooms. Roz glanced into Mr. Sharif's office and saw a portrait of his family, including his wife. Mrs. Sharif was pretty, with dark curly hair and a bright smile. It was the same smile Roz saw on the children. "Look, Jaya's crying like a baby." "Come," Jade's giggly voice from the kitchen. When Roz walked in, the girl was chopping an onion with tears streaming down her cheeks. "Roz, I order you to chop this onion for me," said Jaya, wiping her eyes. The robot picked up a knife, and in a flash the onion was perfectly chopped and dumped into a bowl. Clearly, Roz was designed to chop onions. "Roz, I order you to take the night off." Mr. Sharif laughed. "The kids and I want to cook. We enjoy it." More vegetables were chopped, skillets started sizzling, delicious aromas swirled together, and before long a magnificent meal was set on the dinner table. Oscar positioned himself below to catch food scraps, and everyone else took his seats. Mr. Sharif turned to his daughter. "Would you like to say grace?" The girl lowered her head. "Thank you, God, for this yummy food we're about to gobble down. Amen." "Thank you, Jaya," said Mr. Sharif with a wink. "And thank you, Roz, for everything you've done this past year. I had my doubts, but now I can't imagine what we'd do without you." The children looked at each other. Then the family grabbed their knives and forks and dug into dinner. A colorful leafy salad, a plate of sautéed asparagus, creamy mashed potatoes, sounds good, and buttered bread and tall glasses of milk. The meal was beautiful, but as Roz scanned the table, her eyes kept returning to the roasted chicken. It was about the size of Bright Bill. Suddenly, the robot was full of questions. Do chickens live happy lives? Did this chicken know that it would be eaten? Were humans bad for eating animals? No, thought Roz, humans were simply following their instincts, like all creatures, like Roz herself. At least the Sharifs honored the animal by giving thanks, and by turning it into a beautiful, nourishing meal. After he'd finished eating, Mr. Sharif stepped out of the room, and he returned a moment later carrying a violin and a bow. "Growing up, I dreamed of being a musician," he said, thumping back in his chair. He tuned the instrument, put it under his chin, and started to play. His bow glided back and forth, his fingers danced across the strings, and a lovely old folk song filled the room. Mr. Sharif tapped his foot as the notes rang out, soft and then loud, slow and then fast. The song ended with a flourish, and the music faded to silence. Then he rested the violin on his knee. "This instrument has been in our family for a very long time," he said, "since the day when Cyrus Sharif first built the farm." Cyrus Sharif? Roz knew the name. She unsnapped a pocket on her tool belt and pulled out the small journal. "I discovered this in the old barn," she said, handing it over. The children huddled around their father as he took the journal. They read their ancestor's name on the cover. Then they carefully opened it and turned the brittle pages. "I've never seen this journal before," said Mr. Sharif. "It's a piece of our family history. Kids, look at how they used to milk the cows." Roz left the Sharifs like that, examining the journal, learning about their family's history. But what about their family's future? Their lives were difficult. They needed help. and Roz was about to run away forever. As she marched back to the barn that night, the robot felt something like worry and confusion and guilt. I can't imagine how conflicted she must feel. All right, guys, make sure that you answer your discussion question. Have capital letters, punctuation, read it back to yourself, and make it a great one.